Welcome to the episode, everyone.
Welcome.
Take just a few moments to let people in, but welcome to Sustainable in the City.
Yep, I see a couple people rolling in.
How are y'all doing this afternoon? It's a beautiful day outside. The temperature is very, very nice.
It is so nice. We're finally getting little licks of fall.
I know, right?
I had my windows open yesterday. It was lovely.
But then we're going to have we have what are they called? All the different seasons where we have fake fall and fake this, fake that. This is fake fall, I think.
We'll be getting some hot weather again. I'm sure of that.
Give everyone just a few more minutes to come in. But thank you all again for joining us. And we'll get started in just another maybe minute or two.
Talking about something that many people have been waiting for a long time, both on this call and in the city in general. It's going to be a good one.
Yes, Kelly just asked this to the hosts and the panelists, I believe, but question, if we are automatically muted. I keep trying to find the button, just want to make sure. Yes, we are in the webinar function of Zoom, which means that you will only hear or see from those of us on the screen right now, myself, Carissa, Jen, and Christina. The rest of you are muted. We'll talk through in just a few minutes the different chat and Q&A functions that we have on the webinar so you can interact with us. We want this to be very interactive, but you are muted for the purpose of our guests to have the floor.
All right, maybe just give them another minute or two.
Why don't we just go ahead and get started and people can roll in as they will.
Sounds great. All right, well, welcome to the show. Today's episode, we are excited to have Jenn Harrman join us today. Jenn serves as the Zero Waste Program Manager at Metro Nashville Waste Services. We'll be discussing the food scraps pickup pilot and how this program fits into Nashville's overall waste reduction goal, which is super, super exciting. Just a reminder that this is Sustainable in the City. It's in partnership with Zero Waste Nashville and Urban Green Lab. My name is Carissa Hampton. I am the Sustainable Households Manager here at Urban Green Lab. And I am here with Allie Omens, who is the Zero Waste Program Coordinator for Metro Nashville Waste Services.
Thanks, Carissa. And I am going to start us off with just a few housekeeping items before we get into the majority of the episode. Very, very excited to talk food scraps, food waste, and all things composting with y'all today. But first, we already addressed this a little bit with a question from the audience, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, this absolutely should be an interactive experience for all of you. But the way that we do that is through the chat and Q&A features of Zoom. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, there are these little features at the bottom of your screen. They are chat, you see one little bubble, and Q&A, which is the two little bubbles. For the purposes of Sustainable in the City, we will use the Q&A function, so the two little bubbles, to pull questions at the end for Jenn. So as she'll run through some slides for us, and as you think of some questions for her, please do put them in the Q&A function. We will pull those at the end. For the chat, if you want to show our guest some support, maybe start a kind of conversation about what she's talking about. Of course, course, for some of you that have joined us for Sustainable in the City before, Jenn Harrman was the former co-host for the series. So if you want to say hi to her, you can do that in the chat. But all the other questions about the episode, put those in Q&A. And you'll want to make sure that if you want to send something anonymously for some reason, you can do that there at the bottom. And Christina, I believe I'll turn it over to you next, right?
Yeah, thanks so much, Allie. As some folks on the call know, I have been the interim co-host here at Urban Green Lab while we hired our new Sustainable Households Manager. And so now that we have Carissa Hampton at the wheel, we are very excited to have her take on the co-host role for Urban Green Lab with Zero Waste Nashville. So this will be my last episode on screen and on camera, but I will be just like Jenn around as always, ready to talk sustainability. I'll be in the chat and watching the episodes and cheering everybody on because I love this program and it's been a real honor and a real joy to be the co-host for it. So I'm not going anywhere at Urban Green Lab. I will still be here for all things education and classrooms, but Carissa will be taking over as the sole co-host from Urban Green Lab, and she is going to do a fantastic job as a previous educator here in Nashville and also a children's book author. So she really knows how to talk about this in lots of different ways, and I'm excited to see where Allie and Carissa take this programming. So thanks, y'all. It's been a blast, and I'll see you around.
Appreciate you, Christina. Yeah, I am super, super excited to be taking this over and just, interviewing and speaking with all the sustainable experts we have here in Nashville. I think it's going to be amazing.
And extra thank you to Christina for all that you've done to keep this program moving as Jenn transitioned off and I transitioned on. You've been such a great help and you do so much for the sustainability community in Nashville. And Christina recently got a promotion. So you are definitely not going anywhere at Urban Green Lab. If anything, you are growing in your role at Urban Green Lab. So congratulations to that. Congrats on everything you do for all of us. And I'm going to move us into sustainable happenings, if I can get the slides going. So at the beginning of the episode, we spend just a few moments highlighting some things that are happening around Nashville in the sustainability world that may be outside of our topic for the month. So for this one, I'll turn it back to Chris, I believe, or maybe Christina to talk about this Urban Green Lab program that one of their colleagues is working on.
Yeah, so right now you actually have the opportunity to sign up for our pilot program with Urban Green Lab. It's our new hire orientation pilot. So you'll be able to, train those new hires in the workplace on sustainability as soon as they are onboarded. You can email Jacqueline, who is over our workplaces division, at jacqueline@urbangreenlab.org.
Thank you, Carissa.
So we also have poll times and locations for September 14th election, which is tomorrow. You can find that information at vote.nashville.gov. Also, apply for the Nashville Food Scraps Pickup Program, which we'll hear so much about today. And so you will actually get the opportunity to sign up for that today as well.
Thanks, Carissa. All right, Jenn, I will turn it over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Actually, Carissa, I'll let you introduce Jenn first and foremost.
Yeah. So we said a little bit beforehand, but Jenn is here with us from Zero Waste Nashville. She is the Zero Waste Program Manager from Metro Nashville Waste Services, and she'll be discussing this food scraps pickup pilot that we have all been waiting to hear more about. I think that we've heard little whispers about it around the city, and so today we're going to get a little bit more in depth on how it works. So with that, we are going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really do. I'm so excited to be back on Sustainable in the City. It's very hard as a former host not to jump into your just host roles and start chatting with everyone. But it's really exciting to be back as a guest and to talk about this really awesome project that we're working on. But I am going to also just reiterate, go vote, everyone. Tomorrow is the day. It's really important. It's how we're able to share our voice, and I'll talk a little bit more about that with this program as well. So food scraps pickup pilot, what are we talking about? What are food scraps? Yes, that's a question that we get, and that's an okay question, because what are we talking about here? And what are we talking about as it relates to waste? So, oh, I am scrolling way too fast. I am so sorry, giving everyone whiplash from that. All right, so why are we talking about food scraps pickup? And also for those of you, just to give you a little orientation, I know some of you on this call probably are familiar with waste services and our work. And I know Allie, of course, as a host, but our entire team is aimed at identifying policies, programs, and solutions to help manage our waste in more sustainable and resilient ways to reduce our reliance on landfilling. So food waste is a particular stream that is really important to us because it makes up a significant portion of our waste stream. So this gives you a snapshot of what food waste looks like, or what our waste versus composting looks like here in Nashville, and how much material we're sending to landfill. So you can see on the chart, since 2012 to 2022, we're just landfilling more and more and more material. While we're composting, you'll see there's just a very little bit amount that we're composting. Yet about 1/3 of what Nashville residents put in their trash cans is food waste and other organic material that could be composted. So that's a lot of opportunity to keep that material out of landfill. And why do we want to keep material out of landfill? There's a number of different reasons. But one of the most pressing reasons that we do have here in the Middle Tennessee region is simply our landfill capacity. For years and years and years, for decades, landfilling has been the easy way, the cheap way to be able to manage our waste from a public health perspective, to make sure that it's not piling up in your yard. We're getting it, moving it out, moving it to where it can be mitigated and managed in a way that is regulated by the EPA at an engineered landfill to reduce its impact on our environment and our community, but all for the benefit of public health. And but yet those landfills are starting to fill up. And landfills, while we are trying to accomplish a very specific public health service to our citizens by picking up that trash and managing it, landfilling is more and more just not becoming the long-term solution. It's certainly not a sustainable or resilient solution as we look to our future. So in Middle Tennessee, we have about 8 years left or less on our landfills that accept all your household trash. So that's MSW. You'll see that there. That's municipal solid waste. And that just means all your regular trash that you're putting in the garbage, what businesses are putting in the garbage and sending to landfill. So it accepts all different types of materials. And those materials, when they end up in that landfill, they are devoid of oxygen. And so that material, as it lives inside that landfill, it has a number of impacts on our community and our environment. It means that there's potential odors that are coming from that landfill. There's a lot of work that has to be done to ensure that the landfill is not contaminating groundwater, that it's not over polluting our air. So there's a lot of things with landfills that while they do serve a very important purpose and they are highly engineered and they are regulated, they're still just maybe not the best solution when there are other solutions out there for this type of material. So just to give you a quick overview of residential versus commercial. So we did a waste characterization study back in 2017 as part of our work to develop Nashville's Zero Waste Master Plan. So our plan has a goal to reduce all waste that we send to landfill by 90% over 30 years. And we've got priority areas within that. And one of those is food and organic waste. So you'll see here that residents, far more than commercial businesses, put a lot more organic material into their, that orange piece of the pie, into their trash cans. So that could be food waste, yard waste, which yard waste technically is banned from trash cans, and NDOT does collect that at the curb for everyone in Davidson County 4 times a year. So make sure you're putting that yard waste out at the open and out at the curb, not in your trash can. But then also, so yeah, food, yard waste, and other organic material. and a little bit less of that pie is coming from the commercial sector. So overall, 1/4 of everything that ends up in our landfills is going to be organic material. So this is some more of those impacts that I was talking about when we put food scraps and other organics into the landfill. So there's economic impacts. These are just some really interesting kind of statistics that were sourced from NRDC, the National Resources Defense Council, who is a wonderful partner of ours on this project. So you've got $408 billion worth of food is wasted in the US each year. The average American adult is wasting $1,300. I know I'd rather spend that $1,300 somewhere else than on food that I've bought and then put in the trash can. The environmental impacts, there's the water, the energy, and land that's required to grow all of that food that gets wasted. And then again, the landfills will, when they take on that food waste and other organic material, and my next slide shows this a little bit more, so I'll go into more detail there, but it releases methane gas. And then also the social impacts. When we're talking about food waste, well, this pilot program that we're going to get into is focused on composting, so that it's very similar to recycling. Recycling is the bottom of that reduce, reuse, recycle before you landfill. Same with composting. So composting should be reserved for all of those food scraps that are left over that you don't have anything else you can do with. But it's important to remember that to try and not waste food in the first place. So good food that goes uneaten, or that food, those strawberries that are in the back of your refrigerator that you forgot about, that end up moldy. Thinking about the fact that 1 in 8 people in Tennessee are food insecure, and a lot of those are children. So just recognizing that there's a lot of impacts on wasting when we waste food and waste organic material. So that makes this program even more important. So this is a fun little experiment that we sometimes put together for events that we do, that you can do at home, you can do in the classroom. It's really super easy and absolutely fascinating. So when the difference between composting and landfilling, so many folks, and understandably so, when we think about food and how it decomposes, food and other organic material decomposes naturally in our environment. So why wouldn't it do the same thing in the landfill? And it's all about the oxygen. So in a landfill, it's an anaerobic environment, just meaning that there is no oxygen. Whereas when you compost, or when things decompose in the natural environment, it's exposed to oxygen. So when you don't have oxygen in your land, when you're decomposing something in a landfill that's an organic material, that's how it creates that methane gas. So that's what this little experiment is showing. You'll see that there's one bottle labeled landfill that's got the yellow balloon. It is filled all the way up with water so that there is no oxygen in it at all. And there's just banana peels on the inside or other pieces of fruit. And you'll notice that it has started to inflate with methane gas, and it only takes maybe 3-4 days for that to happen. Whereas the compost, because it is decomposing with oxygen, it does not create that methane gas. And methane, of course, is an incredibly powerful greenhouse gas, more potent than carbon dioxide. All that to say, this is a material that has another solution that doesn't have to be landfilled. It is a material that absolutely can be composted. Okay, so that kind of gets you into kind of a brief overview of the why. Why are we talking about food scraps? Why is this important? So let's talk about what is this food scraps pickup pilot program. So a little bit of the overview. So first off, the why. Why are we doing a pilot program? Because of course, naturally as a pilot means that it's essentially a study and a test. So our goal for this pilot is to gather data to inform how we can build a plan to scale this program to everyone that we offer services to. So as Metro Nashville Waste Services, we offer curbside trash and recycling collection to single family households in the urban services district. So we've got 2 different tax districts. Many of you are probably familiar with, where some folks, if you're in that urban area, you pay an additional tax, and that supports that those curbside programs that we offer. So our goal is to, as a first step to collecting food scraps, is to scale that program, our curbside program, to include food scraps collection. So this pilot program is an opportunity for us to gather quantitative and qualitative data to inform how we might be able to do that and understand the feasibility of moving to a full-scale program. So what does this program, what does the pilot itself look like? How are we going to gather all of that data? It's going to be a weekly curbside collection of food scraps for 1 full year for 750 households. Those households are they're single family households in the Urban Services District who currently receive Metro collection and do not already pay for compost collection. So you can compost in your backyard, you can take your compost to a drop off and you're still eligible. But if you do already pay for services, that is one eligibility requirement that you would then not be eligible for the program. But if you get our trash and recycling and you don't pay for compost collection at your curb already, you are absolutely eligible to participate and apply. So how it works, very simply, for those of you that have Compost Nashville collection, that's essentially what it's going to be. You're just going to kind of have a different dashboard and different hub of information. So, but Compost Nashville is our contractor for this pilot project. So they are going to perform the weekly collection. Everyone is going to be provided a zero waste kitchen countertop food scraps container that will come with a little with information on the pilot program, what's accepted, things like that, some basic educational materials. And so in that bin, you'll collect your food scraps throughout the week. So that can be, we'll talk more about the materials, so I'll hold on that. I'm just getting ahead of myself, you know. Then so you put your food scraps in your soil paper into your kitchen container. Then you put that into everyone will be provided a 5-gallon bin from Compost Nashville to put those food scraps in. That bin is lined with the compostable bag provided by Compost Nashville. And then every week you'll set it out at the curb. Compost Nashville will come by and pick it up for you, and they will replace your bin with a new clean bin and clean liner every single week. So one of the nice things about that, and for that'll be really interesting is to see is the difference in your trash versus your compost, since all of that smelly material is going to be going into this bin that gets regularly cleaned out, whereas your trash can, if you're like me, you have to kind of rinse it out every so often because it gets kind of smelly from, in my case, dog waste, but that's a whole different story. But if you're putting food scraps in your trash cart, you might have noticed that there are certain things that happen. And so this is a kind of different approach. It's a smaller container that you can even keep in your household. It's got a nice lid that seals. So you'll keep your food scraps there instead. All right, so then after you pick it up, so after Compost Nashville does their thing, they pick it up, they take it out to the compost company. So it's an industrial composting facility out in Ashland City. So this is a hyper local process, which is really cool. Unlike some of our recycling where we do sort it all here locally, but then a lot of those materials, they're sold across the Southeast. So they still stay regional, but this is hyper local, staying in the Middle Tennessee area, which is really awesome. So all of that material gets unloaded at that facility, and then it's sorted. There's a pre-sort. So if somebody puts something in that's not supposed to be there, they're able to pull out, they'll pull that material out. Then it's blended with wood waste and other browns. So kind of drier material. And then they're set up in piles for the aeration process, which means they're pumping that oxygen that I talked about before into those piles. They're also making sure it's maintaining the right amount of moisture for that composting, natural decomposition process and composting process to happen. So then all that material breaks down. They do another screening process to get out any material that is maybe too large, or if there's any films that have gotten in there, they do try and pull those out, although it is difficult. So you want to, just like with recycling, it's best to make sure you're only putting in what can actually be composted, which is going to be part of the work that we're going to do to educate our participants. And then after that, you have your finished compost product. It's a rich soil amendment that is creates really healthy soil structure. And so that is then sent off to farmers, gardeners. You can buy it at Gardens of Babylon and other places around the city in bags, and it makes a wonderful compost product rather than ending up in the landfill. Here we go, what you can compost. So this is a handy little chart because this also goes a little bit back to the why we're doing this program. So we have a lot of wonderful people that already compost in their backyard. I've met a few people that compost with worms. But as you'll see on this list, there are certain things you can't really compost through those other methods. So meat, bones, dairy, fats, oils, grease, leftovers, those kinds of products are the types of things that are going to attract rodents and raccoons and things potentially to your backyard compost pile, because it sits there for a long period of time. So those are things, and also your backyard compost pile might not get hot enough to be able to manage those materials. Worms also have a very particular diet. So if you're composting with worms, you also can't do those yard trimmings either. So in the industrial composting, though, is able to take all of those materials. So it allows us to really look at capturing as much of the material stream as we possibly can. So backyard composting, while we still promote backyard composting, and even if you are a backyard composter, you're still eligible for this program because of that gap right there between what you can compost at home versus what you can compost at a commercial facility. So that'll be really important information for us to collect as well throughout this program. So a little bit about where we're pulling our participants from. So as I mentioned, and as Carissa shared earlier, the application process is open. We'll get you links in the chat to that. And also there's going to be some QR codes at the end. So we're really wanting to make sure that this program is, because it's a fact-finding mission, it's a study, it's wanting to understand how Nashville residents are going to interact with a program like collecting food scraps at the curb. So it's really important to us and to this pilot program that we are representing as best as we can our diverse communities with those that apply to participate and those that we select to participate. So that means that we are looking at non-native English speaking communities. We have applications are available in English, Spanish, Arabic, and Kurdish. And then also on the website, you can translate the online form into other languages as well, but those are the top 4 languages spoken here in Nashville. So we do have that available. And any of our non-English speaking communities and immigrant communities are ones that we want to involve in this pilot. We also want to look at underserved populations as well with different programs, especially when it comes to our compost drop-off program. So you'll see, so that goes into that next bullet point too. So you'll see the 4 stars on this map show where our convenience centers are, where we have compost drop-off at no charge for all Davidson County residents. So super wonderful program. It's been growing that program in its use over the last few years, which we're really excited about. But we also recognize that there's a whole nother side of the county that really does not have that same access. So we're definitely looking at some of that side of the county that will be in our priority areas and priority demographics as well. But ultimately, it is open to everyone in this super ugly green area that you see on the map. That is our urban services district. So if you have our collection and you're in that area, you are absolutely eligible to participate and apply. A couple of additional priority neighborhoods that we have. I know these are kind of hard to see, but we are working with Compost Nashville, and they, between their routing that they have for their trucks and the routes that we have for our trucks for collecting trash and recycling, we've identified 5 neighborhoods that align really well, either with their routes or with ours. So there's 750 participants, and about half of them, if they're in these priority areas, are going to be able to have the same collection day for their trash and recycling as they will their curbside compost collection. That will not be the case for every participant. But we wanted to make sure that we had a good number of folks that did fall into that category. So that's why these 5 neighborhoods, Bordeaux, Madison, Antioch, Creve Hall, and Donaldson, are priority areas for us because of those alignments. So if you live in those areas, or if you know folks that live in those areas, these are the ones that at this point are our priority for getting more participants to fill up the routes in those areas. So if you know anybody, so you'll see Bordeaux, we're looking for 109 folks. Same with Madison. In Antioch, we're looking for 90. In Creve Hall, 45. And in Donaldson, 85. So if you know anyone in these areas, we really would love if you could share it with anyone you know, or any groups or neighbors, friends, enemies, anybody at all that you can get to participate in these areas, as they are those priority neighborhoods. All right, so the rollout. So this has been a really exciting process. We're trying to be as thoughtful and considerate, as well as engaging with community members as we move through this process. So we started back working on this, and in, I guess it was June, we had an advisory group meeting where we brought in folks from different communities, different community groups, to help us with our application. So the application is has been built based on feedback from the community, which was really exciting, because our original form, if you had seen it, you never would have applied. You would have been like, too long, didn't read this. But now with that, we have some really great feedback, and it's wonderful to have that input as we work through this process. So the application opened, and that's where we're at basically now. It's still open. We're looking at kind of tentatively closing it in late September, but ultimately, if we don't have all the participants that we need, so we do have, I believe, over 2,000 applications already. Don't let that keep you from applying, because we might not have all the applicants that we actually need. Also, if you apply for the program, that just gives us more data to be able to plan for the future when we look to scale this up. So if it's something you're interested in and you want to see Nashville do, please apply, because you'll share a lot of information that will be very helpful in the long term as we build our planning and strategies for the future. But ultimately, as soon as we are able to identify those participants and have our full 107.50, the application will close at that time. So tentatively late September, but we'll see as that process moves forward, as we're trying to be incredibly thoughtful about those participants that are selected. So we are in the process of reviewing all the applications that come in and selecting those participants. One of our staff members has done an amazing job really looking at all of these different factors and aspects of the form that we put out there, and all the different questions that we asked folks to get in a diverse group of people that will be participating. And then we're also going to be building some, the next step then is to build educational materials for the onboarding process. So we'll get that group of stakeholders together and be sending out, developing these materials and sending those out to them to help them make sure that we're meeting our audiences where they're at, and see what their feedback would be to make those as best as we can. And then we will onboard folks, and hopefully the pilot is going to begin mid-October. So coming up in just a month. Sounds like a whole lot to do in a very short amount of time, but that's okay. All right, so how to get involved. So you've heard about it. You're like, yes, let's do this. Let's apply. So just reiterating, so apply and share this. These two QR codes go to our Spanish and our English form, but we do have also, if you go to our website, which the English version goes, I believe, just directly to our website. There's also links to fillable PDFs for Arabic and Kurdish as well. But both the English and Spanish, we have online forms that you're able to fill out through those languages. And then, so apply for the program. Even if you don't think you're eligible, go ahead and apply. That data is invaluable to us. And then share with your friends, your families, your neighbors, share it online. The more that we can get this out there, the more we can identify those participants, and the more we can show and demonstrate that there is a real want and a real need for this, in addition to all the data that we've collected that will show that as well. But it'll show the public support. For those of you that that apply that are not selected or interested in other things that you can do around reducing your food waste. So these are just composting options. So we do have our 4 compost drop-off locations at all of our convenience centers. Again, no additional charge for Davidson County residents. There's community composting. I know there's one community composting site in the Green Hills area. If you're interested in starting community composting, we provide free resources to do that. So if you're interested, please reach out to me in hosting a community composting site. We also offer backyard composting bins. If you join one of our Dirt on Composting webinars, or if you want to host a Dirt on Composting webinar for a neighborhood group and bring one of us in as a speaker, we do give away compost bins for free during those presentations. We also have an online on-demand webinar that you can watch, and we give away, after you complete that webinar, you can do a little quiz, and that will we give away 2 compost bins a month through that program as well. Or you can just go to our convenience center, buy an Earth Machine compost bin at our Omaha Convenience Center rather for $50, make your own. So many different options for backyard composting, but we do have resources for that. We've also got information on our website about composting with worms, or vermicomposting. So if you have questions about that, you can check that out. It's really fun if you have kids. Really super interactive, and a great teaching tool. And then of course there's the private collection. So even if you don't get our pilot program, Compost Nashville is still a service that's available to residents in Davidson County. There's also a company called Regenerate that is that services kind of a southern part of Davidson County. And then of course Compost Company, they tend to do more commercial collection. So if you have a business, but there are options to pay for private collection if you are not selected for this program. So those are other composting options that you have. So this was just a quick introduction to the pilot program. Again, there's that QR code, and I'll get that in the chat if it's not already there. That's of course my email, and then zerowaste@nashville.gov goes to my entire team. So if you have questions, feel free to use either one of those to get in touch with us. If you have any questions about any other zero waste programs, do email those as well. We're happy to be a resource to share information and answer questions, whether it's about composting, recycling, whatever it might be. But really excited about the Food Scraps Pickup Pilot Program. This is something that, as we've seen these applications roll in, so far to me, it is already clear that so many folks here in Nashville have been wanting this. So we're excited to be able to demonstrate the feasibility of this through this pilot program to hopefully scale it up in the future. So appreciate your time to let me share about it today on Sustainable in the City. And I know there's some questions for me. Maybe not.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we had some questions that we were just curious, but to start off with, can you speak a little bit more about your sustainability journey and kind of how you started doing your work with Zero Waste Nashville?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I've had I feel like it's an odd journey, but it makes complete sense the more I think about it. So my undergraduate degree was in interior design. And through that education, I got really interested in sustainable building practices, and got really interested in historic preservation. I really felt that, these buildings that are old, that are incredible senses of place, are getting torn down just to end up in a landfill, as opposed to being reused and continue to be parts of our community. And so I then went on to get a master's in historic preservation and spent many years working for nonprofits. I worked for the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I worked for a tour company for a while that was focused on educating the public about historic buildings. So spent a lot of time talking with the public through those programs, or through that work. I did a lot of communications work, got started doing social media and website management. So started learning this whole other skill set associated with that preservation passion that I had. So got a lot of experience in communications, digital communications, working with people and working with the public. Ended up after many years of doing nonprofit work and really wanting a full-time job with benefits, I ended up, which I love the nonprofit world. I love the work that I did, but it was, I started thinking about my retirement and how I was never going to have retirement. So I ended up at Metro government, which was an incredible opportunity. I worked in communications for water services department. So my background, that background in communications came into play there, and it gave me the opportunity to then move into waste, which is has just been a culmination of that communications aspect while also caring about these resources. Even though historic buildings, there still are natural resources ultimately, and there also are built environment resources, and they're valuable resources. And so I have a passion about not wasting things. And so this has just ended up to be the perfect culmination of all of those different things. But I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, when I started in this role, I didn't know all the rules about recycling. There was a huge kind of learning curve. But it's incredible work. I love the work that I do, and I love the opportunity to talk with folks about so many more different topics around not wasting the things that we have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just to hear about your sustainability journey. I know that can be super different for, everybody, but kind of the same, the way that we are able to sustain life. So I heard you talk a little bit about the priority neighborhoods for this pilot and how you're selecting participants in areas. But can you speak a little bit more about why it's so important to provide Nashville residents with this curbside composting service?
Yeah. So a couple of things there. The priority neighborhoods, and I talked a little bit about our diverse communities and wanting to be representative of Nashville. But to dive a little deeper into that, we all learn very differently, and we all interact and understand different public services very differently. And that's different across individuals, across neighborhoods, across cultures. And so it's really important that we have an opportunity to start exploring that as soon as possible. There's a lot of folks out there that they want this program, and they are the first that are raising their hand that they're signing up. But there are already some of those people that we know are going to interact with this program and support it. So we need to make sure that we're looking at folks that maybe don't have as much of that already kind of green indoctrinated into them already. But then also understand how we might communicate differently with those different groups across Nashville. It's one thing, I'll be honest, that I've struggled with is, I can talk at length with somebody that already knows about the things that, has already a background in recycling or whatever that might be. But when you're talking with somebody that maybe they're just trying to keep food on the table, or maybe they care more about their kids' education than they do about what's going in their trash bin. Everybody has so many different priorities. And that's really important to understand how that interplays with how we manage these programs, because ultimately it'll be another bin. And while you're still doing the same action, you're still putting that material into a bin, it's a different bin. And then you also have to take that bin out. So there is a little bit more that you're asking of someone. And so there's just so many factors in there that makes it critical that we have a really diverse group that we're looking at. And one thing I know I'll be really interested in, and one thing that we're going to look at is also different cultures eat different food, and different people eat different food. So while you might have one group that really recognizes hamburgers and banana peels and, I don't know who has leftover pizza. It happens. I don't understand it, but you have those, more of those traditional American foods where you have other folks that maybe they've got food scraps that look very different from that, whether it's Indian food or Mexican food or whatever that cultural look is. That's also going to be something that's that really plays into this, and make sure that we're being culturally appropriate with some of the materials that we're developing, and how we educate those different groups, and how we build those materials. So there's so much that goes into it, and it's only 750 people, but that's still a lot of people that can help tell us a lot of really good information if they are not all the same type of person.
Yeah, definitely. If you're prioritizing those neighborhoods, I can see, you know, people are more likely to compost if it's convenient, if it's quick, if it's cheaper. So that's great to hear. I saw that there may be benefits that you're offering to these volunteers for this pilot, to just, you know, try it out. Could you speak to me?
Yes, of course. I totally forgot to have that in my presentation, so I'm glad you asked that. So we also recognize, you know, we are asking the community to help us out, although it's also, there is a benefit to you when you do this program. You do get free collection. So that's a like $450 value for the year, or more. So that is something you get with the program. You also will get a free bag of compost, as well as a zero waste gift. So we've got t-shirts and utensils and bags and different things that we'll be giving out to folks. But then in addition to that, we're still looking for partners in this, but we do have a bunch of other prizes. We've got a $50 gift card from Tennessee State Parks, which I love. If you've not stayed at a state park, this could be your chance, because I love the state parks. They're amazing, and they're wonderful places to stay. They have wonderful facilities. So we got a $50 gift card from them. Root Nashville has given us trees. So we've got all of these prizes that we're going to be able, everybody that participates and gets through the full program, they're going to be entered in to win over 100 prizes. In addition to everybody getting free compost and everybody getting a free Zero Waste Nashville gift.
Awesome. So if, you know, it's not motivation enough to keep some of this food out of the landfills, then, you know, you get some extra perks out of it.
Absolutely.
So jumping around a little bit, you talked about contamination. You touched on contamination a little bit, but can you kind of talk about what happens to the load of food scraps when someone incorrectly composts or fill their bins with things that are really not acceptable or accepted?
Yeah, that's going to be some of the kind of qualitative, somewhat qualitative work that we'll be collecting, and data that we'll be collecting on one side. So Compost Nashville, whenever, since they are a contractor, whenever they go to that bin, they check to see. They do a visual inspection. If it's overly contaminated, they're not going to pick it up. So, which is somewhat similar to our recycling program. If we do notice, so our drivers are not necessarily opening the lid, but if they notice that your recycling bin is contaminated, they're not going to pick it up. Same here, but they're going to actually visually inspect it, because it's a little bit more of a hands-on collection program. So they'll check it. If it's overly contaminated, they're going to leave it, and then you'll get a notice about what is that contamination, and we'll be working with them on what that looks like, and connecting with them on all of that, so we can also improve our education that goes out to folks. If there's just a little bit of material in there, so you might put one or two things in that, oh, it turns out that's, you know, like a produce sticker is a great example. Take the produce sticker off, but if you don't, they're still going to collect your bin. You know, there's a balance that you have to find. And so it's going to be really interesting to collect some of that data to see what are the habits of people. Are produce stickers constantly happening? And then does that then become a problem further down the line if everyone is doing it and we do this to scale? So it'll be really interesting, but ultimately, as long as it's not overly contaminated, it's still going to get picked up. But if it is, there's going to be education provided so that that action can be corrected and it can be picked up again the following week. So there's no fines, there's no shame. It's all about education, and understanding what those behaviors are so that we can do a better job to educate as
well. Awesome. So the materials you said will be taken to the compost company, but can you tell us about like the future capacity of this site to be able to take more material? For example, if we were to expand this curbside composting for all of Nashville, would it be able to accommodate us?
Yeah, that's something we've talked with them about in the past. And I think, of course, Compost Company would be able to speak certainly a little bit more to it, but that's part of the thing. One of the things that we're going to be looking at. So as we collect this material, it's all going to get weighed. So we're going to know exactly how much material we collect. And then based on if you're a single family household versus a 4-person household, that's going to help us kind of identify how much waste per person, and do a bunch of estimating and maths to understand, okay, how much material we're likely to collect. And then is that something that facility can handle, or how long would it take for that facility to scale up? I will definitely say that Compost Company is out in Ashland City. So that is fairly far, and it's also it's not central. So because it is outside of the county in one direction. So it would be nice to have another facility that is on the south side somewhere, kind of southeast quadrant, for just for that transportation aspect of it to and make it a little bit more efficient in terms of collection. So those are things that we're going to be looking at. I will also note that if we're going to start collecting, I highly doubt that Compost Company, if everybody and all food waste was banned from trash cans, they wouldn't be able to handle it. They absolutely are not at that point. And so this is an opportunity to understand what that growth needs to look like, and what solutions may or may not be available or may need to be invested in. One thing that that Metro is looking at, our group is looking at, is anaerobic digestion. While composting is just a little bit above anaerobic digestion on that waste hierarchy, anaerobic digestion still creates a fertilizer product. So what that means is, for those of you that are in Nashville and you go to the bathroom in Nashville, all of your waste from going to the bathroom and washing your hands and all of that goes to one of Metro Water Services, for most of you, Metro Water Services wastewater treatment plants, where 2 of them are connected and one of them will be upgraded here in the future, but 2 of them are connected to a facility that digests that organic solid material and turns it into a Class A biosolid fertilizer. And that is a process that can also be done with food scraps. So we're looking at opportunities to pilot either possibly co-digesting, so us putting our stuff with their stuff, so water and waste coming together, but still just looking for opportunities to pilot other technology on how to manage this material. But then also, of course, through this program as well, we want to do education around those higher and better uses for food as well. So we are going to be doing education on how to store food properly, how to not waste food, donating food, things like that, to make sure that we're starting at that higher end before we're having to collect those food scraps. But there's always going to be those wasted food scraps. And so we're going to have to find kind of multiple solutions to be able to manage it on the back end. But this will give us a lot of that information about what that needs to look like.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're making education, such a priority in this. We learn so much from the participants just as much as they learn from us. So I think that's great. What do you think will be most challenging about this program?
I do think that I feel like there are so many things. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is, I know, especially for my team, that we want to do everything right. We want to do everything perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. So making sure that we're, that kind of that time constraint, I think is definitely a little bit of a challenge, because we also don't want to wait so long to do this. Kind of finding that balance of, okay, let's get going, let's do it. I think also finding the participants. It's really easy to find people that want to do it. It's a lot harder to find people that don't want to do it. And so I think that's going to be a little bit of a challenge. But but then I think those are the top two things that come to mind. It's also going to be just a really interesting, I think, learning curve on the education side. You know, we do so much with recycling. It's going to be really and maybe that's not a challenge, or maybe it's just so exciting that it doesn't feel like a challenge to me, because I'm really interested in the communication aspect of it. But, you know, making sure that we're communicating with our residents in a way they understand. One thing we've already noticed is that when we say food scraps, folks don't actually, not everybody actually knows what food scraps are. It's a term that we're finding people asking us, what are food scraps? So it's just all of those little things that come up, and making sure that we're communicating with the residents in ways they can understand. It's always a challenge when you're educating the entirety of a community. So yeah, those are the things that are on my mind.
Yeah, I definitely think that these challenges can be just as exciting, you know, when you're piloting anything or trying out something for the first time. So with that said, we are going to hand it over to Allie, who is going to address some of these questions that we had in the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. As a member of your team, I do concur that this is, while it is a truly exciting and amazing opportunity to be doing this program for the community, it's been a whole lot. It's been an adventure, and there's a lot of moving parts. So you've laid it out very, very nicely in all that we're working on to make this program happen. So with that, we have a few questions for you in the Q&A. I will start with the one that has the upvote, and I don't think I said this at the beginning of the episode, but there's a little upvote feature in Q&A. It's the thumbs up, and so if you want to hear a question asked, use that little upvote and you can move it to the top of the list for me. So with that, someone asked, they said they really want to be chosen for this program. Is there anything they can do to be chosen? And you talked about this I really love this question because it shows the enthusiasm for what we're doing.
I don't know that there is a secret to being chosen to a certain, it's such a hard, I love this question though. I think the most important thing you can do is just be honest about who you are as a person when you're filling out this form, because that, even if you want, and again, I'll reiterate, even if you weren't chosen, and everybody that applies, we are going to be reaching out to garner input in other ways. So it's really, as I don't know that there is a one thing or another, but if you fall into a category of a group in Nashville that is underserved, or that's in an area further from those compost facilities, or, you know, some of those different demographics that are not the typical kind of demographics you think of for folks that are already doing this work, or already want, you know, engaged in composting. Those are things that we're looking at, but there's no one thing you can do to automatically get selected. There's no favoritism in that way, but I hope for you that you get selected.
That's a question to be asked up front, but we'll move into some easier questions for you. We had a few questions about what materials can be composted and a few about contamination. So I'm gonna merge those together. But can you talk to us about the commercially compostable silverware and compostable, like the bioplastics, and whether or not those are included in the program?
Yeah, so we will accept, so anything that Compost Company, Compost Nashville accepts are things that will be accepted as well. And that does include compostable plastics and compostable serviceware. It's going to be very interesting though, because that's definitely, and that, now that you mentioned that's going to be a huge challenge, is helping educate about that in particular. Because we've already done some work internally with our Metro facilities in collecting food scraps and compost in some of our buildings, and trying to figure out how do you message and create a sign around, hey, if you've got something that's a compostable fork, you can put that in the bin. Well, the moment that even if you say must be 100% certified compostable, as soon as you have that picture of a plastic fork on your sign, all the plastic forks are ending up in the compost bin. So we are absolutely going to accept them. It's just important to know that when it comes to acceptable compostable serviceware, is that when it's a compostable plastic, it has to be BPI certified compostable, or to, I'm going to forget the number, but there's an ASTM standard. That's another label that's on our website. That's also on the Compost National, I believe the Compost Company website, that shows that yes, this is a compostable product that does work in an industrial composting facility. So that means it can't be labeled just biodegradable. That's a huge thing. If you've been in discussions around about biodegradable in terms of sustainability, it's unfortunately a term that is used for a lot of greenwashing. Thank you, Matthew, ASTM D. I knew it was D. I had the number D6400. I love that. Thank you. And Robert as well. Thank you. I've totally lost my train of thought now.
I do want to make sure we get through some more questions, so I may
Let's just
interject
keep going.
on you, Jen. And with that, I want to mention that our convenience centers that we have, I'm going to put a link here in the chat, that the convenience centers, that material that gets dropped off goes to the same material compost company as this pilot will. So the list of materials that you see on this website page, same materials will be accepted. And related to bioplastics, don't love calling them that, but just for the purpose of this, compostable plastics, will the containers use compostable liners? The Compost Nashville containers use compostable liners, and can you tell us about the compostable liners versus, you know, why it isn't a plastic bag in the Compost Nashville bin for the pilot?
Yes, so there will be a compostable bag, so it is fully industrially compostable. So all of that material, that bag, it requires that industrial composting for it to break down. So it's not just going to break down in your bin. So it serves just the same as a plastic bag would in your trash can. But this way, all that material that's bagged can just be tossed right on out, including the bag. It's really important that if you're, so even in your countertop bin, if you wanted to collect material in a bag, it needs to be a compostable bag. Or if you use a plastic bag, you'd need to empty that plastic bag out and then throw the plastic bag away. Because those plastic bags, even though Compost Company, they have a system that allows them to try and get film out, it's not perfect. And it's much easier to just not put that material in there. Nobody wants compost, bag of compost that then they find pieces of plastic in. That's, but that's the risk you run if that kind of material gets in there. So it's important that it needs to be a compostable bag.
We just got a question about saving the chat. The chat will be saved and sent out with actually the chat won't be, but the Q&A. No, the chat will be. We will send out the resources that are mentioned in the chat. So we are happy to share that. And moving along, this was also a question that we'll address in the follow-up email about what companies offer composting services in the area. So I'm going to move past that one for now. We've been talking about contamination. So I'm also going to move past that. And let's see, pre-sorting process at Compost Company. At the facility, there's a question asking if the food waste will run through a depackager or separator.
No, they don't depackage anything, or it's kind of a hand pick, hand sort when things come in. So that's why if Compost Nashville sees material that is too contaminated to take to the facility, it will stay at your home for that education to take place. They don't have currently that equipment.
A follow-up question on the compostable bags, since I just saw it. Where might one buy a compostable bag? Could you provide some? We can also provide this in the follow-up email, but Jen, if you have any recommendations off the top of your head.
Yeah, you can actually find them in a lot of places, but just don't be fooled by just because the bag is green. I have seen them at Walmart before, but the last time I was at the Dickerson Road Walmart, I could not find them. But you can find them at a lot of grocery stores. You can find them online. Just look for that BPI certified compostable. I know for sure we get them from Office Depot sometimes, just because that's a contractor where we buy supplies for the office. So there's a lot of different places that they're fairly easy to find at grocery stores, at places where you would buy trash bags.
Thank you.
Oh, and you can probably find them at all the refill stores, I would imagine as well. They probably have compostable trash bags. So Goodfill, Sage Refill, those kinds of places.
Asked if how they will be notified if they are chosen for the pilot.
Everybody that has applied will be notified one way or the other in an email that will be sent to them, and they'll if you are not selected to participate, please note that if there's somebody that was selected that we end up having to remove from the pilot because lack of participation, we'll reach out again to folks that are already on our list. But yes, we'll be notifying everybody via email.
All right. Well, I think so we talked about contamination. I'm going to dismiss this one. There was a question about a specific street. I'll say that we don't have specific streets at this point that we know are included in the pilot. No one has been selected for the pilot formally. So I'm going to dismiss that question, but just know that you are, as Jen said. Yes, Jen, go ahead.
There are specific streets in those priority neighborhoods that we've identified. So I'd be happy, Allie, if you're okay with it, we can send out those maps so that you can look at them a little closer, because if you are in one of those areas, I'll say that is going to be one of the ways where you are more likely to get in if you are in one of those areas, because we have a high concentration of people that we need in those areas. So we can send those maps out, and those would be specific streets. But other than that, it can come from anyone in the urban services district.
Well, I think those are all the questions we have, unless we have any last minute inclusions. But thank you, Jen, so much for your time and talking to us about this program. We very much appreciate it. It's nice to have you back on the Sustainable in the City program. And Christina, I think with that we can end our program for the month.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I for one have already applied. I'm waiting for my email either way. So this is exciting to see.
Cool. All right, well, thank you all, and we'll see you next month for the next episode of Sustainable in the City. Take care.
Thanks all, appreciate it.